Hello, amazing parents and caretakers, and welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. I'm your family empowerment coach, Celia Kibler. I'm a mom of a blended family of 5 kids. I'm a grandma of 9 kids, an author, a teacher, a speaker, and a consultant with over 40 years of training and real-life parenting experience. I'm here to offer you practical, doable tips, strategies, and techniques that will pump up your parenting skills and create peace, love, and laughter throughout your family. In addition, I'll be interviewing some great humans that are on a mission to make your life a better, happier, and healthier life. So let's not waste any time and get started with the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. We have a special guest with us today, Meg George, and it's a discussion that we're going to have that I have not had at all over the past 5 years of this podcast. And it's going to be a really interesting one because it's one that parents don't normally approach with children, but I absolutely feel is really important. So Meg is an entrepreneur, an author, and a mom. Her debut children's book, What's Philanthropy to Philomena, inspires people of all ages to understand the power and joy of generosity. Isn't this a wonderful thing to teach our children? Yes. She's the co-founder and president of a philanthropy consulting firm, George Philanthropy Group, where she, her husband, and their team advise nonprofits and families on impactful giving. So don't we want our children to learn the power of giving and how great it feels to give to somebody else? So, Meg, welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
We're happy to have you. And if you tell everybody how you got started with all this and what made you decide that this is an important thing to encourage children to learn and to do.
Philanthropy is one of those fields that people fall into for work, and no one seems like they have some professional lifelong desire to work in necessarily. So just like everybody else, I fell into it. And my degree is in French. I grew up in upstate New York, which is also where I went to college. And I stayed at my alma mater to join the fundraising team. And I learned a ton about people's habits and money and generosity and just the impact that philanthropy could have. And the truth is that I was 22 years old and I was learning about the word philanthropy and what it meant for the very first time. So my husband and I joined forces after we had met each other in this work and decided to leave our jobs to found our firm. We wanted to impact more nonprofits than just the one that each of us had been working for and devoting all of our time to. And so we started to consult with organizations who needed to go through a campaign and raise a significant amount of money in a set period of time. And we really create the plans to do that. So we're specialists in what our industry calls major gifts. And those are those big gifts that everybody reads about in the news that really transform schools and museums and kind of shape and change the trajectory of where they're able to go. We also realized doing this work that there are families with means who want to give money away and have found that job to be a little bit more challenging than you'd think because they want their money to be used really well and be very impactful, but they also want the experience to be meaningful and they want their kids to be a part of it. So we started to work with families and individuals as they set up these processes too. And sometime during the pandemic, when we were home and reading a ton of books to our little kids, I thought, there's really no children's books about philanthropy. And I bet that there are a lot of parents and grandparents and teachers who shy away from this word. Like we hear it associated with Bill Gates, but what about ourselves and our kids and our own families and communities? So I decided I would write this book. and that I would hope it could be used as a tool to introduce people of really any age, although it's a children's book, to philanthropy and what it is and what it can mean for them.
I love all of that. And, and like any age, if a parent's reading to a child, it affects them. If a grandparent's reading to a child, if one of the teenagers is sitting there while a parent is reading to a child, they hear all of it and they're impacted by all of it. And I read the definition of philanthropy, the desire to promote the welfare of others. And that is so important because as I teach parents, we as human beings are born with a slew of emotions. We're not born with any knowledge of how to regulate them, or there's just no intelligence around our emotions until we learn it. But interestingly enough, one of the emotions we are not born with is compassion, which is why, my parents will always say to me, so my 2-year-old won't share. How do I get them to share? Why won't they share? Well, sharing is an act of compassion. One has to sit there and go, oh, that person needs help, or that person would like, a turn with what I'm playing with. And since they don't have compassion, that doesn't come automatic to them. They have to be taught. And philanthropy, helping others, wanting to help others, is also an act of compassion. And, I love the word generosity because that's another thing that's so needed to teach children, because we grow up in a very egotistical world, very self-centered world. And generosity is not always taught by parents.
It's so true. And I didn't realize that about not being born with compassion, although I listened recently to some informational interview about sociopathy, and it was an actual sociopath talking about what she was born with and what she wasn't born with. And it made me think a lot about my own work. I don't think she used the word compassion specifically, but it reminded me of this idea that in philanthropy, even if you meet someone who's a 68-year-old, incredibly successful businessman or woman who we assume knows everything because they might have all sorts of money and all sorts of homes and success and news articles written about them, but it doesn't mean that they know what they can actually do to make the world better. So I think we assume a lot when we hear the word nonprofit or charity or generosity or philanthropy that people who have a lot of money know what to do. And that's just absolutely not true. So if we can get to our kids younger and earlier around generosity, I think we're going to see very different giving trends in the generations that are going to come after us. And I notice with my own peers and friends that they're asking a lot more questions than my own parents did, right? About where we can sign our kids up to volunteer for something or expose them to different ways of life and opportunities to give back. So there will be an interesting shift in our country if what I think is happening does happen, which is a lot more action around generosity and not just this idea of transactions, right? That our grandparents and our grandparents had to engage in because that's what you did when you were a community member.
Exactly. And, if we can get our children, who are, of course, the next generation, if we can get them realizing that acts of kindness, acts of generosity, recognizing someone else as an equal human being, regardless of their culture, where they come from, or what they believe, or what color their skin there is, if we can build that act of compassion and understanding, which of course I work on with the Day of Calm Foundation, we can ultimately start connecting people and unifying people, and kids that grow up into adults become thrilled to be able to help someone else by some mere act of goodness. And it may not even be monetarily. You know, it's so often even teaching children. I remember when my grandkids used to live with me, we were driving around and we always talked about like if somebody was on the corner and they were begging for food, and I usually have water bottles in my car or snacks that I can give them. And we were driving down the road towards Walmart, and Mason, who I believe was 4 or 5 at the time, sees a man sitting on a curb with a dog. Now, I honestly had no idea whether this man was homeless or not homeless, but Mason says, "Oh, let's stop at Walmart and get him lunch for him and his dog." And I'm thinking that was such a thoughtful thing to do. Of course, we're going straight to Walmart and we're going to get him lunch.
Of
And so
course.
we bought like a sub and a bottle of water. And we bought the dog a bottle of water and then like dog bones or something like that. He picked it out. And then we brought it back to the man. Honestly, no idea if this man was homeless or not, but he was very grateful. And I explained that, you know, my grandson saw you and wanted to buy you lunch, buy you and your dog lunch. And whether he was or not, the fact that Mason was able to recognize that, and he knew that by the fact that we kept it an active conversation of helping other people. And I think that's what's so great about your book and what you do. So would you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, the book
first?
is sure. The book shares a story of this little girl, Philomena, who discovers philanthropy, the word, for the first time by hearing her dad talk about it. And she goes on this day-long journey of having conversations with different family members about what philanthropy might mean to them. And so she's able to interpret it through 3 ways that I think are really important. One is about giving away things, like buying things for people that they really need, like food, or taking the things out of your own pantry that could feed other people. And one is about giving money away, so that if you do have money and you're in the mindset and the financial space to make an investment, right, in another organization, that they can use the money to do different things. And that kind of blows her mind and other children's minds that people do that. And the third thing is using time, so that you can actually, for free, at no cost to you or your family, help make the world better. And there's this thing at the end that happens in the book where Philomena is kind of pressed to give away some of her things. And it's not from the food pantry. Because, like, think about Mason or any of our kids. If they're being asked to take grandma's or mom's, you know, boxes of pasta and jars of sauce and give them away, they're kind of like, yeah, no skin off my back. I'm happy to. When they're asked to give away the things out of their room, whether or not they still like them or play for them, it's a totally different, you know, consideration. And so Philomena goes through that thought process. But what she sees is that when people are talking about acts of generosity, these adults in her life, they seem really proud of it and they seem very happy to talk about it. And she wants to feel that way too. So what I want families to experience is that if you do engage in one of these activities, you're going to feel really good. And I know, because I do and my own kids do. And then it makes you want to do it every year. There's all these studies done, and I won't pretend to quote the stats on them because I don't want to do it incorrectly, but around lowering blood pressure and healing faster when you
Absolutely.
actually are giving back. So I'm a big believer that no one's too young to start.
Absolutely. You know, it's even like at the holidays in my family, we will, instead of buying everybody Christmas gifts, we'll go adopt a family. We did that one year where we adopted a family and they had a list, you know, this everybody's sizes and whatever they needed. And we just, everybody spent money on them. I mean, because there comes a point to realize that often kids just don't need more stuff. And the latest and greatest thing is not necessarily the best thing for your child. And often I tell parents all the time that what a child ultimately wants is your time, is not you to go buy them something, is you to go to the park and have a picnic, is you to have a taco night at home, with a movie or something, camp out in the backyard or your basement. Do something where you're spending time with a child. And that means more to them. And that can relate to them even spending time at a soup kitchen or somewhere else, the zoo, taking care of animals. Animals are a great way to teach compassion and to teach generosity. And the fact that you brought up that many people that do this, it's like an automatic smile on your face. And smiles, we know, are contagious.
And it is, there's something interesting about spending time with your kids at places like the zoo. It also presents an opportunity to demonstrate that a lot of these places like zoos and museums either wouldn't exist at all without charity, without generosity from community members, or they wouldn't be as beautiful or as inexpensive as they are. And that's something great to teach our kids.
Hi, I'm Celia Kibler, and I am the founder of the International Day of Calm. And I want to take a minute to tell you why I created the Day of Calm and why it is my intention to create this feeling of calm, happiness throughout the year. Because if we don't do something to change our daily lives, how will we ever change future generations? How will we create the next generation of adults that are confident and that are self-reliant and that are intentional about their own behaviors if we don't take the time to show them and role model what it's like to be that kind of person? It's a fourfold mission. Number one is personal responsibility. Each person has to start taking responsibility for themselves, for their actions and reactions, to stop the ridicule, the judgment, the criticism, and start connecting compassionately. We are all role models to kids. We need to create intentional parents that create a cooperative, respectful, happy home and create the family harmony that every family deserves and every child deserves. We need to have expressive education that allows a child to be curious and creative and finds learning fun. We need to make children safe. We need to have them know that their personal harm is not an everyday worry, that they're safe in their homes and in their schools. And these four initiatives combine to create a child that becomes the adult of the next generation who is confident, who is not recovering from their childhood, who is intentional, compassionate, loving, kind, and willing to learn about other people and other ways and other values. Let's do this together. Join me for the International Day of Calm. Join me for the International Day of Calm Summit when you can learn how to do this. And let's start doing this not just for one day on April 5th, but throughout the year. Isn't our world worth it? Isn't the next generation worth it? Go to dayofcalm.org.
And the truth is that most private school tuitions do not fully cover the cost that it is to educate your kid. I mean, that is definitely the case in higher ed. Why do you think we hear about scholarship funding as often as we do? And this is a chance for us to say to our kids, like, someone else who might not even know you at all donates their money to make sure that the school can still offer this experience to you and other kids like you. So I think that there's just these chances in our everyday life when we are spending time with our kids to show them how selfless someone else is being to benefit us.
Right. And then that contributes to overall gratitude. And, I remember my son went to school at a small college in Baltimore, and it had gone from a 2-year school to a 4-year school. Mm-hmm. And he got accepted. I mean, there were literally 180 students accepted for that year, not like in his major the whole year. And one of the alumnus, as a gift, literally paid for 180 students' tuition. So I didn't have to pay tuition that first year. It was awesome. But what a nice gift. That was like their way of giving back. And,
That's amazing.
what a nice gift, and so appreciative. And all of those things give a child the experience to learn what gratitude is and to be grateful. And like you said about going to, a theater or a zoo or something like that, that is mostly supported by donations. How great is it that you get to enjoy this amazing place that people around you, they could be walking right next to you, gave money so that you can have that enjoyment.
Yeah, that's amazing story. I love that. And it's true. It's a good education support, financial support from strangers, alums or other parents, what have you, is a great first exposure to generosity.
Yeah. And nobody knows that, like in college case, I didn't know who the person was.
Yeah,
But don't you think I was pretty grateful that I didn't have to pay for a year of college?
totally. Gratitude is a wonderful starting point for thinking about how to give back yourself.
Yes. And here in the United States, kids don't have any idea how good they have it. I just came back from the 2024 World Forum on Childcare and Education that was in Vancouver. I did a presentation for, and these are people, 750 people all over the world whose main focus is the betterment of children. And most of these people were not like United States people. They were from poor countries, and the schools these kids go to and are thrilled to go to. If you saw like even a lower class American school compared to what these kids go through, our kids have no idea. They have no idea. And it is, I believe, part of the job of a parent or an elder in the family to share that, to share maybe their generational experience, why they're giving to the organization they're giving to. Like, I support the Smile Train Foundation because that was like my mom's. She loved that foundation. Of course, I'm all about smiles, and she was always about smiles. And so when she passed away, I continued the support. I will always give to that foundation in honor of her. And that's another cool thing, is like the traditional generational giving, and why, we choose who we choose and why we do what we do, but also making sure your children are being taught to, to care, basically.
Yeah, definitely. You have to. Books are a great tool. You're bringing up like something I say to my kids all the time. You have no idea. Well, it didn't help when my parents said it to me, and it doesn't help when I say it to my kids, because they can hear that there's kids who live in the same county as them. We live in Palm Beach County in South Florida. The disparity of wealth will make you sick. You can drive 4 miles inland and you can see children walking around in 100-degree heat with winter jackets on, zipped up, because they don't have a t-shirt to wear. And the only food that they will eat that day is whatever they're given at school, if they're going to school. And then you can drive to the ocean and you can see children who live in homes that were $60 million. Right. And you might read about their parents in the news that they've just given a gift of $20 million to someplace. And so there's an incredible, probably psychology experiment you could really do here on generosity doers and recipients, I guess I would word it. And I tell my kids, I can tell you this all I want, but unless you are exposed to these things, I know you don't really get it. So the best thing I can do is read you books and tell you stories about what I know. And when we have the opportunity for you to see the way that other people live, I don't want to just scare you and make you really grateful for the life that you have. I want you to also think, wow, I got really lucky, because that's what this is. They were born into a family where we have a home and we can afford to get the groceries that they need and send them to school. They are
absolutely.
But what can they do from that? And my kids are already at 6 and 8 kind of thoughtful about philanthropy. I mean, they better be, both of their
Right.
do this for a living, but they're kind of creative and curious about what they'll do to make the world better and how they can start doing it now. And it's because we have the conversation a lot, but I know that it would be even deeper if they had more exposure to different things that could use their help. Exposure is really key, and a book is kind of the next best thing, in my opinion.
I think it's great that you wrote the book. And I, like you, I've never heard of another book about philanthropy for children. And, and then it gets them thinking, what can I do? Like the old lemonade stand. Well, I could have a lemonade stand and I could make some money and I could give it to this family in my school that needs money, or I could give it to, someone. I could give it to my church. I could give it to my synagogue. I could give it to somebody else where it will benefit others, not just me. And it makes a child realize that the world doesn't revolve around them, as we are born to think. And we are part of a bigger community. And your impact, that one person can impact it in such positive ways by a simple act of kindness.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I really love talking about this, Meg. And, and thank you for writing the book. I think it's wonderful. Again, the book is What's Philanthropy to Philomena, and available on
Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, and I have hardcover copies with a book jacket available right on my site, megtgeorge.com. And it's the same price as buying it elsewhere, but has a little bit of a higher quality product. So I always send people there first. And if you're in upstate New York or South Florida, you'll also see some bookstores or shops and boutiques, museums that carry the book in person as well.
Wonderful. Do you sign the book if they order it off your website?
I can if they ask. Sometimes people will write a note and ask. I've had a few book signings, and I have to get my act together ahead of this holiday season, which was when those events were really popular. And then I'll make sure that I share on social media, where I'm not a very excellent user, but try to be, of where I'm going to be signing books too, so that hopefully my kids go to a private school wants me to say hi to their kiddo and write a personal message, I'd love to do that.
Well, I love it. I just think the book's great. I plan on ordering it. I have not gotten it yet, but I'm absolutely going to order it. And I thank you for writing it. So as always, Meg, I always ask my guests to offer one tip of advice of how they can help their child in the way that you specialize in. So what is a piece of advice that you can give parents to really encourage their willingness to be philanthropic?
I'm going to tell you the same thing I do for my kids, because I think it works really well, and I think it can work well regardless of your financial circumstance. So I choose 3 nonprofits in my area pretty much that I think my kids would think are interesting, and I take into account what their interests are. So I know my son is extremely aware, for whatever reason, of health challenges that other kids go through, and he seems really moved by kids having gone through some challenging things. And my daughter is a huge animal lover. And then I think of a nonprofit who I've seen do amazing things. And we choose one night at the end of the year where we talk about different nonprofits, 3 different ones. And I say, here's who they are and what they do, and here's why they need to raise support, because that's not obvious why anyone would need to raise money. And then we vote on just one, even though my kids usually disagree, and I don't even always agree with where they select. I'm a very big believer that when we pool our resources together and make one larger gift, we can have tremendous impact compared to spreading our money around a mile wide and an inch deep, they say. So even as a couple, my husband and I usually give to just 1 or 2 places a year, and we do as much as we can so that they can do as much as they can with it. So I tell my kids, you have to give something, even if it's $1, you have to. Well, by the time the conversation's done, they always give more than $1. And I tell them how much I'm going to give too. Then we'll go online together and make the gift, or I'll show them how to write out a check. We're checking a lot of boxes here on the lessons we can get.
Absolutely.
We'll go drop it off together, and they love doing it. So my tip is don't think don't have enough money to get your kids involved in giving back. It's a very fun conversation. It's like a night we've come to really look forward to now at the end of the year. We celebrate Christmas, and I happen to maybe know that they're going to have a little money from grandparents or something at the time, so they don't have an excuse to not participate in this. And I hope that it's something they do with their own kids when they're older too.
And I'm sure it will be, because it just sounds like something that's going to naturally become a family tradition.
Yeah.
So great advice. Thank you so much. Please buy What's Philanthropy to Philomena. And that's where you can start. Start with the book. And then from the book comes discussion. And from discussion comes all the things that you can do to help someone else or an organization. And it may be something you guys love to go to. It may be all of a sudden you're like, you know what? We love to see plays at this theater. Do you know what? They're a nonprofit. They live and they survive by people helping out. So instead of just buying a ticket, let's see if we can go a step further. So thank you for being here, Meg. I really appreciate it.
I'm so grateful for what you bring to the world, and I am also really grateful that you welcomed me to be a part of this. So thanks. This was fun.
Oh, you're so welcome. I am grateful in return, and it's been a pleasure. And for all of you, again, Meg's book, What's Philanthropy to Philomena, go to meggeorge.com. You can get the hard copy, you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, all the places that she said, and we'll have the information in the show notes. And like she said, don't let the amount of money be the determination, because once your kids start learning and loving the power of giving, then money they get, you can always say 10% goes in our philanthropy fund. So if they get $5, is 50 cents. Yes. 50 cents goes in that fund. I'm not great at math. Goes into that fund. And then it's automatic. And then it builds through the year. So it's a great habit for kids. Thank you, Meg, so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. And to all of you out there listening, thank you for listening. If you found this valuable, please share it out with another family that may also find this super valuable and ready to start a new tradition in their home. As always, friends, I wish you days filled with peace, love, tons of laughter. Really is the best medicine. You have to laugh more. Laughing is super fun. And I'll see you here next time on the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. If this episode was helpful to you, please share it with a friend and leave us a review that will help others. Wonder why kids don't come with a manual? Well, wonder no more, because I wrote you one, and it's just won a wonderful Mom's Choice Award. Go to celiasbooks.com and buy your copy of Raising Happy Toddlers, as well as my children's books. I appreciate you being part of my mission to help 10 million parents stop yelling at their kids. Please be intentional and hug on those kids of yours. See you at the next episode.